Hey guys, welcome back to the latest episode of the Growing a Dental Practice podcast. I am your host, Mike Hennon from Patient Boost. In today's episode, I'm joined by Dr Davinder Raju, Principal Dentist at Dove Holistic Dental Centre, a private practice in Bognor Regis, UK. Davinder is also the founder of Green Dentistry, an app helping dental practices become more environmentally friendly and sustainable. Welcome to the show, Davinder. Thanks for joining me today. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. I'm really good. Yes, really good. Thank you.
Are we just going to leave it there, or are you going to tell the audience what you've just told me about your last 4 weeks?
as soon as you say, okay, we're recording, it's like, okay, all right, okay, what do I say? No, okay, all right, yes. I've just come back from a 4-week break, and so I'm full of energy, full of beans, and even though it's really hard to tell, but yes, I'm skipping inside. I'm skipping inside.
No, I want to go further than this. So, where were you supposed to be for the 4 weeks? I'm not letting you off lightly. Like we're gonna talk. I'm gonna bring this out.
Okay, so okay. I normally don't take holidays. For years I didn't take holidays because I was so focused on the practice. And the only time I started taking holidays when my wife started talking to the receptionist, bypassing me, saying, "Right, okay, he's going on holiday here and here and here." And so I didn't have a say in the matter. And so 2 years ago, she went to my reception and said, "Right, it's our 20th year wedding anniversary. I want the whole month off. Book off the whole month." And so the plan was to go away to India, travel different parts of India, have a really good time and celebrate the fact that she'd endured 20 years of me, 20 years of dentistry, and she deserved it. And we were meant to go away, except a certain individual in said relationship didn't have a valid passport, didn't renew their passport in time, and so we didn't go away. Yeah, no.
Oh, that must have been an awkward conversation.
We didn't almost make it to the 20th year celebration, but bless her, she knows what I'm like, and so we went to Cornwall for a week instead. Not quite,
Fantastic.
not quite India, but it was good. It was a nice break. It was a really good break.
Perfect. Well, yeah, like you probably weren't expecting me to bring that out, but I had to. Like, it's quite funny and just shows that you're human.
It wasn't funny at the time.
No, I bet.
and maybe in a few years' time, I'll look back and think, yeah, that was so funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember that time?
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, remember that time? Yeah, that might take a few more years. But no, that's awesome. Davinder, it's so great to have you on. We had a great chat a couple of weeks back. Really looking forward to speaking to you again. Sort of diving into, why you got into dentistry, why you went and brought practice, and then, why you've gone that extra step and tried to make dentistry greener, which is awesome. So to begin with, I'd love to learn more about you and your background. And just something I've remembered that I haven't told you yet is periodically I'm going to make you the full screen.
Oh.
So just be aware of that. Yeah, you can deal with that. You'll be looking at yourself, but it's all good.
I do that all the time.
Fantastic. You do strike me as someone that looks in the mirror a lot. Right, let's crack on. So yeah, tell me about you. What's your background?
Okay. So born and bred in Wolverhampton. And I don't know whether I should say this. I think the best part of Wolverhampton is the view in the rearview mirror as I drove away. That actually, I take that back. It's a great place. I had a great upbringing, but we were very, very poor. I think we were sort of my mother was a stay-at-home seamstress, sewing for pennies per garment, and my father was ill. And so I had a very, very poor upbringing in Wolverhamptons. And I think that's one of the reasons why I did dentistry. It's one of the reasons, yes, why I went into dentistry.
Fantastic. So is that the main reason, or are there other reasons around getting into dentistry? Was there pressure on from the family side, or?
Okay. It was more that my mother was uneducated, my father was uneducated. They wanted us to go away to university, be the first in the family to go away, get a vocational degree. And so it was very much, she was working very hard so that we could have a better life than they had. They didn't want us to suffer like they had. So yes, it was, I guess it was a push for us to do better than they did.
Fantastic. And so why did you specifically go down the dental route? Like, did you consider other areas of healthcare or other vocational professions?
No. I actually wanted to become a maths teacher.
What? That's totally different.
I know. I had some great maths teachers, and you know, when someone's really enthusiastic, you think, oh, great, you know, I want to be just like them. And one of the things I loved about maths was, you know, I had a problem. I couldn't work it out. I'd go to sleep, and I'd wake up, and in that state, halfway between you're sort of awake and asleep, you're sort of dozing. I'd often sort of visualize the answers, and that was brilliant. So I really loved maths, but I think I'm quite impulsive. And I remember being in this sort of sixth form common room, and someone said, "Oh, you know, dentists make a reasonable amount of money. You know, how about dentistry?" I thought, actually, yeah. And I think sort of growing up being poor, sort of think, actually, yeah, I've got to make sure I earn a reasonable amount of money so that I'd be comfortable. And at that point, I remember thinking to myself, you know, if I earn £400 a week, I'll be really happy.
Excellent, yeah. Love that.
and that's what's made me to sort of think about going into dentistry. And I hate to say it was actually, I thought I'd be financially well off.
Mm-hmm. No, but that's definitely a reason to do it. You know, you want you and your family to be comfortable. I guess having that you know, the poor upbringing, you know, that kind of even more would you say more motivation?
Yes. Yeah. And in a nutshell, yes. You know, if you're one of a handful of children that are getting school-free dinners, you know, I felt different, and I didn't feel comfortable. And so yes, there is that drive to actually, I don't want to go through this. So yeah, it did have a big part to play in it. Yeah.
Awesome, perfect. That's brilliant. And so, where did you study dentistry?
Oh, at Liverpool. Actually, yes. Initially, I went to King's in London. Okay. Initially, I went to King's in London, and it was interesting because I went along there, and I thought I'm gonna have lots and lots of fun there. But when I got there, all of a sudden, I felt very insecure. So it says a lot about me. I was really insecure in that. Most of the other students, all those other students that I came across had parents who were consultants in this, that, and the other. And here I was with a poor upbringing, but you know, my parents weren't working, from inner city Wolverhampton, and I couldn't quite. Clearly, it was my own insecurity. I just couldn't quite gel. And I remember being there for about sort of 4 weeks, and I phoned my father and said, "Look, Dad, I don't fit in it. I want to come home." And bless him, he came the next day and took me home.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. I think, you know, how many parents would do that? It was just like, okay, if you don't like it, come back home. So I went back home, and he sort of said, okay, what are you going to do? I said, I'll get a job. I couldn't find a job, so I ended up working in a sweatshop for £1 an hour, 7 days a week. And you know what? I couldn't wait to get out. And that's the truth. So I'd left King's, worked in a sweatshop, worked for £1 an hour, 7 days a week. Often working 12, 14 hours a day. And so I couldn't wait to get out of that. And I guess it was good. It was actually, life could be hard, and sort of growing up, life was hard. And then all of a sudden, actually, life's really hard. Let me go out and get a degree. So I then went and applied to different dental schools, and I went to Liverpool because they were squirting each other with water instead of working. I thought, this is a place for me. But don't tell me that.
So was this on like during an open day? Like, or was this once you'd actually got in and started like learning?
No. When I got there, it was very serious. Okay, it was very much you buried your head into the books and you practiced really. No, it was during an interview. So we sort of walked around the building, and I thought, actually, this seems like a good place. And I used to support Liverpool as well, you know, because at the time, when I was a kid growing up, they were top of the league. And, you know, and like I said, Wolverhampton's such a dead-end place, so was a football team. So I was not going to support Wolverhampton Wanderers.
Okay, perfect. So it all worked out, obviously that. So, and I think, you know, it's a brave move, you know, sort of saying like, hands up, I don't like the university, I don't like the course. And then going back, like, I would have been terrified if I'd phoned up my dad and said, I want to leave, which I actually did. And he was like, no, you're staying.
Yeah. My dad was quite a grounded bloke. I've loved, yeah.
Fantastic.
I'm grateful. Yeah.
Brilliant. So you did your almost like your year in a sweatshop, and then you obviously reapplied to dental school. You got in at Liverpool. When did you graduate from dental school?
1992, so quite a long time ago. Very long time.
It's not that long ago.
You know, it does feel like an absolute eternity, and I had a lot more hair then.
You've got a great set of hair. Unless there's a giant ball patch at the behind.
There is a ball spout on the end, and I didn't see it until that video of me in cribs.
Right.
My barber did a great job. I'm covering it over.
Just cover it over. Excellent. So for listeners, Davinder did a video with dentistry called, is it Dentistry or My Dental Crib or Dentistry Cribs?
No, Dentistry Cribs, yes.
Dentistry Cribs, where just like the kind of MTV, you know, original Cribs series was, you know, we sort of walk into the front door and Davinder walks us around, shows us where the magic happens. And that's really cool. So I'll include a link to that in the show notes because it's a good, it just shows you, well, your practice is great.
Thank you.
Like a really nice looking practice, some great tech in there. And yeah, and I'll put this out. Is it the brushing booth we talked about earlier?
The tooth booth, yes.
Tooth booth. So the tooth booth, for everyone listening, is basically a separate room where patients can go and brush their teeth, where they're in a room with a sink and no toilet. So it's a lot more hygienic and just a nicer experience, but there's still the privacy to brush their teeth. It's a great idea. I think more practices should have it.
Yes. I think the thought of sort of cleaning your teeth in a shared bathroom in a public space is
gross. Yeah. Wow. No, move on. So I love that idea. Anyway, so you graduated in 92. Where did you get your first job as an associate?
You know, I'm not going to tell you where it is, just in case it still exists.
Roughly, like the location, not practice. Okay,
so in Milton Keynes. Okay, so that was my first real job. I did. It used to be called VT vocational training. Now it's called Foundation Dental Training. I don't think you use the word training. In Walsall. From there, I went to Milton Keynes. And it was a great practice in that I walked in, I was blown away by the patient lounge and the reception area. They had a water fountain, and I thought, wow, this is an amazing practice. I can't wait to work here. So I accepted the job. And unfortunately, when I started, I realized that I'd made a big mistake. Venturing out to the real world, this first job, I started working, and I remember doing a composite, and I said, all right, fine, we get the light cure. And the nurse disappeared into another room and then came back with the light cure. I think, oh, maybe someone borrowed it, whatever. And I didn't pay much thought. And then later on, I had an extraction. I said, okay, fine, I need this, this, and the other. And the nurse disappeared again. I was thinking, what is she doing? You know, and she came back with all the stuff. And then at the end of the day, I thought, okay, I need to look around the surgery. And I looked around the surgery, and I realized actually it was very, very poorly equipped. The practice was sharing lots and lots of the equipment that should have been available in each room was actually being shared amongst several surgeries. And I thought, oh gosh, this is my first job. And it was very much a case of all fur coat and no knickers. That was my first post.
Is is that a saying?
all, all fur coat and no, I was being really serious as well, you know. I'm sure it is. It's
Well, if it's not, you can claim that.
yeah, it was. But yeah, so that was my first post. So I didn't last.
So you were swayed by the water fountain or the water feature.
I thought it was an amazing. Yeah, I was. You know, I was naive. You know, I was thinking this is the place to be.
Yeah.
I was reluctant to say which practice where it was because I think there's only probably one practice in the whole country that's got water fountain.
Excellent. But it wasn't what you what you thought it would be, and like, so obviously having to share equipment, obviously would that generally increase like the time you were with the patient? Did that sort of have knock-on effects where you were delayed and had a backlog of patients?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And you know, as far as I'm concerned, if there's any resistance to doing the ideal treatment, well, there shouldn't be any resistance. You know, if you've got an optimal care plan and the patient's there, then anything that makes it more difficult means that you're less likely to have a great result, because then you're looking at the clock, you're looking at whether or not that piece of equipment's available. You know, if somebody else is using it, then of course it will delay you. So yeah, every room should be self-sufficient. Every clinical room should be self-sufficient.
Fantastic. So how long did you survive there before moving on?
I handed my notice in pretty much immediately, but I had to work.
Oh, amazing! Straight away.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't. I just I didn't think there was any point trying to argue. I just thought actually, as the practice owner, should have thought about this beforehand.
Yeah, no, I fully appreciate that. I have actually handed my notice for a job after a week. Like, and just like when you know.
Yes.
I feel like, and it's why would you? I've done a few jobs, but I've done a few like 2 years here, 2 years there, and I was kind of getting a bit like, and I wasn't just doing like the same industry. I was hopping around industries, and I was like, I can't keep doing 2 years in a place and then sort of falling out of love with it, or I can't do that. So I've got to make just like quick decisions.
Yes, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I like I said, I'm quite impulsive as well, and yeah. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes not so well. So both ways. I think it's probably 50.
Excellent. Fantastic. That's awesome. So you did your notice. Where did you end up next? In a mixed practice, fully NHS, fully private?
You know, I worked in predominantly NHS practices up until I bought my own practice. And what I tended to do was sort of work in a practice for a year, a couple of years, and then just move to a different part of the country. I don't know, just felt like I was free and I could do whatever I wanted to. So that's what I ended up doing. I mean, I suppose the disadvantage is you don't see what your dentistry looks like after 3, 4, 5 years, and that makes you a much better clinician. You know, I remember coming out of dental school thinking I was the bee's knees and God's gift to dentistry because I thought I was good. I guess when you see your work after about 4 or 5 years, you think, actually, you know what, it's okay. It's not as good as I thought it would be all these years later. And I guess that being in the same practice, seeing your own patients, makes you much more humble, and it really helps you focus on delivering really good quality dentistry, and also getting the environment right so that what you do is more likely to survive. You know, if the oral environment isn't right, if you haven't tackled all the risk factors, no matter what you do, it will fail. But that's going off to my sort of minimal intervention dentistry training and I guess my philosophy.
Fantastic. No, that's awesome. So I guess, you know, knowing that you would be seeing these patients for years, like years to come, that kind of held you accountable.
Yes, but I think you need to be in a place to realize actually dentistry does fail. You know, I think the only thing that's permanent in dentistry is an extraction. Everything else has a lifespan, and sort of just reevaluating your work after a number of years. I guess it's feedback. You sort of look back and think, what material did I use? Why hasn't this worked as well as such and such? You've got a comparison, but if you're sort of jumping from job to job, as a locum was saying, and you never see your own work in the real world years later.
Yeah, that's fair. So do you feel like do you wish you had stayed in the same place for a bit longer, or are you quite happy with like moving around and getting different experience?
No, yes, I was grateful for the experience. This is all hindsight, and
Yeah.
and I don't look back and think, oh, I wish I'd done that. I did what I thought was the right thing with the information that I had at the time. So I don't go around beating myself up for decisions I made 15 years ago. So
no, fantastic. That's awesome. Love that. So you mentioned that you obviously bought a practice. When did you buy your practice?
Okay, when I bought my practice in 2006. Took the keys in July 2006. And the reason for that was there's a couple of reasons, actually. I think one was I was working as an NHS dentist in Whetstone, London. But I've never been a high grosser. I've never ever been a high grosser. In fact, one of the things that I learned a long time ago as an associate was when I bumped into an older colleague, and he'd seen my work and he'd seen how I was working in the practice, and I was talking to him and sort of bumped in the corridor, and he was a South African. He was a wonderful man. He sort of said, and this is my best South African accent, he says, "Dovey man," because I was called Dovey then. He said, "Dovey man, you're a cracking dentist, but you're never going to be rich." What the hell do you mean I'm never going to be rich? I've gone into dentistry on a certain level of income. And I was thinking, no, what on earth are you talking about? But he spotted something in me, which was that I actually valued patient care more than anything else, that I never put profit before my patient's well-being. So when I worked in Whetstone, I was working on the NHS. Like I said, I've never been a high grosser. And when I kind of got whiff of this new contract where you'd get paid the same whether you did 5 fillings or 1 filling, I was thinking, I'm already not a big grosser. I'm not really earning an awful lot of money. And with this new contract, I just thought, you know what, I can't survive. And that's when I thought I really needed to start looking at buying my own practice and swerve away from NHS care. I couldn't earn a living that, I couldn't earn a living from doing the sort of dentistry I was doing on the NHS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and then the other thing was there's possibly a blueprint at the back of my mind, embedded in me by my parents, which is perhaps a cultural thing, which is you don't work for someone else, you work for yourself. You own a business, you own a practice. And my mother would often say, okay, why haven't you bought your own practice? Why haven't you bought your own practice? Why are you working for someone else? You could be working, you could own your own business. And so the two things sort of together sort of motivated me to buy my own practice.
Fantastic, love that. Fantastic. So you bought it in 2006. What state was your practice in, and what type of practice was it at the time?
All right. Okay. Okay. So it was quite a rundown practice. There was lots of gaps in the appointment book. It was predominantly a capitation-based practice with a small NHS component, and I took it on really enthusiastically, and I threw my all behind it, and yeah, luckily over the years we've sort of turned it around, and it's a very successful practice now. But at the time, I remember it was really hard work. I think that one of the things that really hit me was that there's optimal dentistry and there's acceptable dentistry, and dentists work to, I guess, different standards, what they perceive as being acceptable, and the dentist will look at and think, do you know what, that's suboptimal. I need to change this. And I think that's what I realized when I took over this practice, that there's different standards of care, shall we say.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how quickly did you go to fully private, or how did that process happen, or you are fully private?
No, so there was a small NHS component. There was it was sort of children and exempt adults. That was a gradual transition, and once I sorted out the patients, made them dentally fit, the following year there wasn't as much treatment to do, and quite rightly so. I wasn't going to drill for the sake of, I wasn't going to intervene surgically when no intervention was needed. And so, year upon year, I was facing a clawback, and year upon year, I'd get a sort of letter from NHS commissioning body. I can't remember whatever title they called themselves, saying you're in breach of contract, in breach of contract again, and all this sort of stuff. And every year, the contract sort of diminished. And there came a point when it was like, do you know what, is it really worth carrying on with the NHS dentistry? But we carried on. We became fully private when we had to relocate the practice. And when we relocated the practice, we had an NHS inspection, and they gave me such a hard time. I'm sure they're making up things, sort of saying, well, that monitor can't be on there. You've got to lift it over. You've got to have it off the work surface so you can wipe underneath it. I was saying, really? Okay, fine, then I'll do this. And they were giving me a bit of a hard time because I needed the NHS contract to be able to get funding from my bank. And so I had then an associate that was able to do the NHS care. And when she moved on, I couldn't find an NHS provider with a performer number. And so I sort of found an associate. She wanted to work, but she didn't have a performer number. And I thought, okay, fine. I think you have to monitor them for 3 months or something like that. I said, okay, fine. So I applied for her to offer NHS care, but I was told I didn't have enough experience. And I sort of queried this, and I said, I've got a master's. I've been practicing dentistry for over 20 years. What do you mean I haven't got enough experiences? And they came back to me and they said, oh, you haven't got enough experience on the administrative side of NHS dentistry. And I thought, actually, somebody doesn't like me. And so that's when I dropped the NHS contract completely. About 20.
Okay, so
it was only a small part of our overall turnover. So, and to be quite honest, it was the best thing that ever happened. That the NHS component took a lot of administrative time. So I felt sorry for the children that we couldn't see anymore. But it was taken out of my hands eventually. So that's how it happened.
No, awesome. That's fantastic. And that's quite a common theme when you talk to people that have got a current NHS contract. Like, there is a lot of hoops to jump through, and offering the right amount of treatments and trying to avoid clawback and all that sort of thing can be quite tricky. But no, that's awesome, man. So what else did you learn as a practice owner, or what have you learned as a practice owner? During our pre-podcast chat, you talked about a conference you went to, and I'd love to dig into that.
So I went to the first ever international conference on sustainability in dentistry, and it was brilliant. There was a particular speaker, Taito from America, and who's all talking about sort of sustainability and things that he'd implemented in his practice. But one of the things that really struck me was that during his presentation, he told me that he never, we were told a group, everybody was attendees, he never hired somebody on experience. He always hired on charisma and enthusiasm. I was saying, really? Because I always hired on experience. I always thought to myself, my patients, they expect to see someone that's experienced, that knows what they're doing, and that's what I believe. That's what they wanted. And listen, to this dentist was saying, actually, no, go for someone with less experience as long as they've got charisma. I was thinking, that's really interesting. Actually, I've got it wrong. And I went back and I told one of my dentists to leave and find another job. And it was one of the best things I ever did. Yes. One of the best things I ever did. Straight away, there was my shoulders dropped. I felt so much relaxed. And when you have team members that they're not really team members, you know, they go off in their own direction and they don't want to drag everybody and the team in a certain downward spiral. And this particular dentist had been doing this and taking up a lot of my time and energy. And I replaced him with someone with less than 1 year experience, who's Italian, qualified in Madrid, and he sent through his CV, and he'd been doing his work under rubber dam. I met him and I thought, gosh, this guy's so enthusiastic. You know, I really like this guy. And being Italian, he was very easy on the eyes, and I thought the patients will like him too. And hiring was one of the best things I ever did.
Fantastic. So you literally went to this conference, and then what? The next day you get back to practice, and you tell this guy to kind of pack his bags.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And he was a bit dumbstruck, and then he sort of said, "But I like working here." And I was saying, yeah, you might do, but you know what? It's enough, you know. And then what I found was that there was sort of a gradual change in the team, and now I have very much a younger, more dynamic team that I guess share my vision. I hire now on values. When I interview, I don't ask them questions about dentistry. I try and get an insight into what really drives them and what their values are. And I have not a sneaky way of doing it. I just, you know, I just ask them who they admire the most and what it is about these people that they admire, what characteristics it is that they admire most about these individuals. And you can kind of work out what really drives them, you know, as individuals. And then you think, actually, you know, I can work with this person. I like the values that they would bring to the practice. So yeah, that's how I hire now.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. And you know, what do you wish you'd known before becoming a practice owner? Like, what's that thing that you wish you'd known, or things?
I wish I'd known myself. That's a bit.
Yeah, that's very deep.
You know,
in what sense? Like, yeah, let's dig a bit deep into that.
Oh, shoot, I really opened the can of worms. I'm like, okay, this is years of therapy later, you know. I can talk about it. No, you know, I think I might have touched on earlier when I sort of said, you know, we have a blueprint, and often we do things without necessarily thinking about them. And in my case, I guess it was my mother saying, okay, when you get your own practice, you know, and I think buying the practice was also for her, as much for her, or maybe more for her than it was for myself. Yeah, I guess I'm a very different person to whom I was 15, 20 years ago. And yes, you know, would I buy a practice again? I don't know. You know, I know some very, very successful dentists, very successful specialists that go from practice to practice, but they don't own their own practice. It gives them more free time to do other things that they enjoy as well. Don't get me wrong, I really love having my practice. I love having my team. In fact, as you know, I've been away for 4 weeks, and I went to work yesterday, and the team had baked me a cake to celebrate me coming back to work, you know. And I said, "How are things?" And they said, "Really quiet. We missed you." So
quiet on the patient front, or just quiet because you weren't there specifically, and it was like the decibels had dropped.
Quiet because I wasn't there. Quiet because I wasn't physically, you know.
Okay, yeah.
Because
did they enjoy it?
Did they enjoy it? No.
Did they enjoy having you around?
They love having me around. Of course, they love having me around. No. It's a good. Do you know? I actually do. I miss my team. I do miss my team. And I sent them a message saying that I'm actually thinking of you all guys fondly. So it's a two-way thing. They miss me. I miss them. That's what they tell me. I'm sure they.
Yeah,
Of course
I would say that to my boss. Yes, I've really missed you after 4 weeks. Yeah, that's
okay.
Said no one ever.
Okay, but did your team bake? Did you bake them a cake?
Did they bake me a cake?
Would you bake?
Oh, but they baked you a cake.
Yeah, my team.
Would I bake them a cake? I would bake. I reckon, and this is probably it might, unless it says your name on the cake. I feel like someone made a cake for themselves, and then you came in, and it was a coincidence.
You know, I think
unrelated.
I think this may be the difference between you and me, Mike. You know, I see the beauty, I see the goodness in everyone that I speak to. You sort of focus on the negatives.
No, I need to change that. No, it sounds like that. They obviously did make the cake for you. They were obviously great to have you back, and it's glad. It's nice that you wanted to be back as well, which is good. You weren't sort of dreading going back. Which shows that you've got a great business, which is awesome. So that's you. So we've talked about your background. We've talked about you as a practice owner, and you'll continue to be a practice owner. But let's touch on probably, I guess, your latest venture. Although I feel like it's been something sustainability and green dentistry has always been probably a part of you for quite a while. But obviously, it's more lately that you've created something for the wider dental community to try and help them become more sustainable and more environmentally friendly. So where did your sort of green dental journey start, or why did it start?
Okay, that's a good question. You know, at home, I guess we've always been sort of pro sustainability. You know, we've tried to, in fact, we've always sort of bought organic. We've been mindful where we buy our products from. You know, we always recycle, all this sort of stuff. That's on a domestic level, but never really thought about it when I was at work, you know, in the practice. And for me personally, it really twigged when I was doing my master's, and the ecological plaque hypothesis, where we've all got a microbiome, you know, whether it's a gut microbiome, whether it's an oral microbiome, all those bugs inside our mouth, that they live in a homeostatic relationship with us. We feed them, we provide them a home, and that microbiome protects us from some sort of pathological microbes. And so we have this sort of this relationship where we're mutually protected. And if we create an environment whereby more pathological damaging bacteria are introduced into the mouth, then the environment changes, and instead of those bugs looking after us, they're replaced by bugs that actually can cause damage. And it just sort of made, you know, it sounds a little bit weird. I actually started thinking, here I am trying to look after my patients. But while I'm looking after my patients, what sort of impact is my dentistry? What sort of impact is my business, my practice having on the environment? And that's when I sort of stepped back and started having sort of a more holistic view on what I was doing in order to look after my patients, and what was the damage I was creating, what was the damage I was doing by providing this healthcare. And that's when I started looking at the environmental impacts my business was having. That's when I first started thinking about sustainability a long time ago. So when we had to relocate the practice, I started looking at ways I could make the practice more environmentally friendly. And that started off in probably about 2015, 2016. So by the time we moved into the new site in 2017, I thought about a lot of the impacts and how we could mitigate those impacts. That's how it started.
Fantastic. So I feel like, you know, 2015, 2016, you know, we as the public, you know, as a population, we're starting to be aware of, obviously, or become a bit more sort of conscious about the environment, and obviously we're, you know, fully aware of climate change by this point. But I imagine dentistry still hasn't embraced sustainability as much as it could. Why is it really important that dentistry becomes more sustainable? Like, why do you believe that is?
I think that I think every business, and it doesn't matter if you're in the healthcare sector, I think every business has got to look at their environmental impacts. It's something that, as you rightly say, it's growing in awareness, certainly amongst, you know, Generation Z and the millennial generation. It's the right thing to do. And additionally, you know, if with climate change carries on going unchecked, then it's the poorest people in the poorest parts of the world that will suffer disproportionately. And I think that we owe it to the next generation, but also to poorer communities globally to make more an effort to make being pro-environmental part of our ethos. We owe it to them. It's as simple as that.
Fantastic. That's awesome. And so, you know, you're aware of this. You're doing what you can in your own practice. Why did you then start Green Dentistry? That this, you know, this movement. You know, what inspired you, like, to take it, to sort of go beyond just your practice and try and sort of get other practices involved?
Okay,
What was it?
What was okay? I got approached by a few colleagues and said, "What am I doing?" And I'd sit down and sort of talk to them about what I was doing, etc. And it was during lockdown. I had some time on my hands, and you know, I was gardening, started growing veg and all that sort of stuff, and I had this idea: why not just create an app, make it really, really simple for other practices to log on, have everything online, and they can sort of be presented with lots and lots of simple, I say simple, a range of eco tasks that they can assign themselves to complete by a certain time. And I thought, actually, that's not a bad idea. And so I spent lockdown with some code writers thinking, okay, how can we develop this, and how can we make it attractive, but also make it really, really simple. Dental practices are really quite busy, and they haven't necessarily got the time to sort of look into, investigate, explore sustainability. And I thought that if I could make it as simple as possible and just get them on board and create a culture of sort of pro-environmentalism within a practice, then that's the win. That's a win. And then gradually get more and more practices involved. It just seemed like the right thing to do. So an app seemed like the easiest way to do it. So that's why the idea of green dentistry came along.
Fantastic. So just to unpack that then, so people were already aware of the kind of the green measures you were going to, or had you started talking about and sharing your ideas with the sort of colleagues?
No. So it was only my friends that sort of asked me about it. And it was because I had time during lockdown. I was thinking, actually, how could I sort of make it sort of more broadly known? And that's where the idea of the app came about. So
fantastic.
So lockdown was good for a few reasons.
Yes, perfect. Love that. That's really. And are you still a keen gardener?
Do you know, I am. I've actually designed our garden. It's very formal. In fact, it was my third effort. My wife rejected the first two. But yes, I am still keen. I'm a keen gardener. I knew nothing about gardening beforehand, nothing about growing veg. But we can't. It's like my wife says I'm neurodiverse. Apparently, I'm a little bit on the spectrum, and I might go into lots and lots of detail. Because I get really hyper about stuff. And so when we started growing our veg, we actually started making our own fertilizer from comfrey and nettle. And so we were growing organic veg as well. So it's yes, it's good. It's really good fun. I didn't think I'd enjoy gardening. So yes, we're currently in the process of sourcing, and we're going to start planting our garden. We started working on our garden properly last year. Actually, that's not true. I actually started working on the garden during lockdown, where I nuked the shed because it was in the wrong place. So it's been a gradual transition from there. Yeah.
Fantastic. I don't know if I mentioned this in the podcast before, but I bought my first house last year.
Okay. No.
And so I bought my first house, and one of the things that attracted us to the house was it's got a lovely garden. Even though we're in I live in St Albans. It's a very I'm in very central to town, but I'm not overlooked because there's lots of foliage and lots of bushes and trees and stuff. What we didn't think about was how much gardening it would take to maintain it. So I am definitely at that stage where I don't enjoy gardening and it's a chore, and so I'm not there yet. I feel like give it time and I'll warm up to it, but at the moment I just find gardening impractical and like a time sink. But there's a lot of bushes in my garden, so it just it's constantly need trimming. It's just so bad.
I'll tell I love the garden because there's you get through all the seasons, and I think I guess what I like is this constant reminder about life. We're all going through our various seasons, and nature just constantly reminds us, actually, we've only got a finite time on this planet, and make the most of it. So when I see autumn, I see sort of leaves changing color, and the trees going to shed all their leaves, and you think, actually, do you know what? It's just a constant reminder of that. Actually, we're all young. We're going to get older and older and on. There's going to be a point where we're going to die. And when you go outside, I feel nature. I enjoy nature. And it's actually, do you know what? I'm on this planet for a certain amount of time. Let's enjoy it. Let's make the most of it. But leave a legacy and leave people happy. Whether it's your team, whether it's your patients, whether it's dentists that you don't know, just go out and enjoy it. And yeah, that's why I like being in the garden. It's not a chore. When I looked out the window, and there's lots of leaves everywhere. But when you go out there, you sweep the leaves up. It's not a chore. It's like, okay, yeah, I've done that. And then you look over and you think, actually, there's something else growing. Or you look over there and you think, oh gosh, the light's coming through. Isn't that beautiful? A lot of the times, when I used to look at trees, I just used to look at the leaves. And now when I look at the tree, of course, I look at the branches, but now I look at the spaces in between the branches and the sun coming through. So it's beautiful just being outside gardening. Absolutely beautiful. You can't beat that. But
That's awesome.
What do I know?
But I feel like I will get there. I'll get there. Just like the initial shock of all the gardening required was, just too much. But very poetic in a few of those statements, Davinder.
Really? Oh, I can't remember which one.
You can re-listen to it. It's all good. Anyway, that's perfect. No, okay, right. So I'll stick with the gardening for now. Over time, I'll get more into it. So you mentioned there's an app and there's a check that you've kind of broken down all the things a practice could do.
Yes.
To become more sustainable, and it's not about doing everything at once. It's more of a here's what you could consider, sort of check things off as and when you as a practice can do things. So what are some of those things that practices could do almost overnight or within the next few months?
Okay. Okay. For starters, I think I think a lot of dentists are perfectionists. We try and do everything, and we try and do it really, really well. And with sustainability, we're not going to be perfect at it, not from day one. And I think we're ever going to be truly perfect because there's so many variables involved in sustainability. So sort of in terms of embracing sustainability, becoming greener, just start embracing sustainability. Have it as part of your mindset, and low-hanging fruit would be something simple like just switching to a renewable energy provider, for example. Stationary, just draw up some policies. Say, do you know what? From now on, we're only going to buy paper made from recycled paper. Anything that we print is going to be on recycled paper. Just little things like that, and then gradually it will just gain more and more momentum. But yeah, something really simple like that. Introduce some policies and say, do you know what? Every decision that we're going to make, we're going to start looking at the environmental impacts of, we start going to consider the environmental impact of anything that we buy. Start considering it and start implementing it. And it's this gradual transition towards making your practice more and more sustainable.
Fantastic, because I guess every small change you make obviously will add, and especially if every dental practice is doing this, then
yes,
the impact, the reduced impact on the environment from dentistry will be like phenomenal.
Yes, you've nailed it. One practice, two practices, yeah, okay, fine. It's not going to make a difference. Okay, it makes me feel a lot better. As a practice owner, I know we're doing whatever we can. Not only are we delivering great dentistry, we're looking after our patients, we're looking after the well-being of the planet too. So it makes me feel good, and the team love it as well. Yes, the team definitely enjoy that part of the practice, but the more and more as a collective we do it, the bigger impact we're going to have. And as a collective, we can then start going to manufacture and say, do you know what, guys, do you need so much packaging? Can we change the way that you do this, that, and the other? So it's a movement, and hopefully it's going, well, it is going in the right direction. It has to go in the right direction.
Fantastic. That's awesome, man. What you're doing is fantastic. Like, it would be very easy for you to just be, I'm a practice owner, I'm just going to continue to be a practice owner, do my gardening, but to actually create something to try and get a bigger impact is just phenomenal, man. Well done. and keep going. I know that makes it sound really easy, and I imagine the journey's been hard, but sticking with it and pushing through with it is awesome. Like, really good. We need more Davinders.
Thank you. One of my patients, I don't know, who's like his daughter works in the GDC, and I was telling him about it, and I said, you know what, if my dentistry is no good, at least I'll contribute to the dental community in another way. So yeah, it's all good. I enjoy doing it, and so it's all good.
Awesome, man. That's fantastic. So one of the questions I ask every guest is, based on your experience as a practice owner, what would be your number one piece of advice for anyone thinking about buying or starting their first dental practice?
That's a really good question. I would suggest speaking to as many current principals that you can talk to, just get their opinion, and also speak to the jaded ones. So speak to the very enthusiastic ones, and also speak to the very jaded ones, and ask them what makes them tick. The ones that are enthusiastic, why they're still enthusiastic, what parts of dentistry do they really enjoy, and see if that sort of resonates with you. And the ones that are jaded, find out why they're jaded and what it is that has taken the spark out of it. And if that resonates with, or you can see yourself going that way as well, then maybe change your practice or change your mindset, or develop a practice such that it keeps you enthusiastic, keeps you engaged, because you're very much really going to be in for the long haul. I know you only asked for one, but the other thing is, maybe join like-minded dentists, and also I think younger dentists are an advantage. There's lots of WhatsApp groups out there. There's lots of communities you can join. Something like Dentinal Tubules, where there's some very enthusiastic principals, lots of very enthusiastic dentists generally, and they try and maintain that enjoyment, the spark within dentistry. So join something like that. Yeah, that's what I would do. Don't know what's helpful.
That's great. That is great advice, Davinder. Like, yeah, talk to people that have been there, done that. We've got a few episodes where we've got where I've spoken to practice owners like yourself. So there's I've tried to do some of the legwork for you. Go back and listen to them, see what they find out about their journeys. There's a great episode with Dr. Hussein Shafi. He openly admits that his first practice cost him his first marriage. Like, the pressures of building a business, and trying to make it succeed, that it does come at a cost, and there can be some sacrifices. And so just make sure it's right for you, because it's not right for everyone, and you don't have to be a practice owner to be successful. Like you mentioned, there's specialists and so super associates that never own a practice, but they are still wildly successful, and they have more time on their hands. So you haven't got to go that path if you don't want to.
Yeah, absolutely. There's I won't mention his name, but he's a very, very successful practice owner, and he actually admits that if he had his time again, he would be an associate but work for a principal that he got on really well with. I think being a principal for me is certainly, it gives me the opportunity to sort of do the dentistry that I want to do, which is very patient-centered, and I'd like to think that my colleagues, my associates, have that freedom. If they need to take 2-3 hours over a single treatment, then that's fine. I don't put time restrictions on any of my colleagues. So I think that being a principal just gives you that freedom to do the sort of dentistry that you really want to carry out. That's the biggest advantage of being a practice owner.
Yeah, fantastic. No, Davinder, this has been fantastic. If anyone's listening and they'd like to learn more about you, maybe get in touch with you, learn more about green dentistry, how can they do so?
So really easily, you can contact me through the website, which is www.greendentistry.co.uk. So just send an email. I'll pick it up.
Fantastic. That's awesome, Davinder. Well, again, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Fascinating talking to you. You're a very interesting individual. We had a lot of laughs, and going through, walking through how you got into dentistry, your journey as a practice owner, now your mission to kind of make dentistry greener. Really awesome to see. Hope that continues, and obviously whatever we can do to help you kind of promote that message and spread the word, we will do that. But again, thank you for your time, and obviously keep in touch.
Brilliant. No, thank you so much for your time.
Brilliant. Thanks, Davinder. Bye.